Oh, well, she's hosting, so.
Is she at home? Is she at home or is she in Madison?
She's in one of the cottages there, yeah, so we go over and check on her every morning.
Oh, sure.
Should we wait for Mitch or should
She's
we?
just grabbing stuff, so give me 30 seconds, how about?
All right. We
Still be
have,
in
we have 40.
back,
We
yeah.
have 40.
Well, and-
So now we have 35.
And so I was able to talk to her and Kennedy was the one that grabbed me and I just told her
Your
she
door.
would come inside. That was it. Just come inside.
Always waiting on Mitch.
Sorry.
It's his birthday today.
Yeah, happy birthday. We'll try in 30 seconds.
It's his birthday today.
Put candles on it.
Yes.
It's Mitch's birthday.
Well, and I
Also,
had never-
His birthday.
Both of you?
Yeah.
Who brought treats? Somebody had to have brought
I feel
treats.
bad, so I was like, oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, both of you.
All right, Rob, you want to go start us? All right. So we'll call to order the regular school board meeting of the Madison Central School District, Monday, December 11th. Mr. Brooks, when he catches his breath, will record the members present or absent. We do have a quorum, so I'd ask that all would please stand and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Saying happy birthday now?
Yeah, should we do a round of happy birthday?
Well, at my age, singing in the ditch.
Well, happy, let the minutes denote that we have two birthdays on there, huh?
I offered,
Today, both of
I
them.
offered to sing happy birthday,
Happy
but
birthday.
They should have a song like Aches and Pains.
Stevie, it gets no better, let me tell you.
Read the alternatives.
All right, back to the agenda now, back to the agenda. We need approval of the agenda, which is item number 5.
so moved.
So moved by Mr. Miller, is there a second? Second by Mrs. Cecil. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Second item, or sixth item that we have is we need to appoint a hearing officer for the student hearing that we are about to go into. I would be willing to serve in that capacity if someone would make a motion for such. Okay, Mrs. Sims makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Mr. Hanamichael. Further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of appointing Tom Farrell as the hearing officer for the student hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare that that motion has passed. We are ready to move on into then executive session. I need a motion and a second to move into executive session, and then we'll declare the time that we're in.
So,
Okay, Mrs. Sims has the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schultz. Further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of moving into executive session at 5:03 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare that we are in executive session at 5:03. Executive session at 6:26. And we would like to add to the agenda a motion following the executive session, Mr. Brooks?
We can take a motion, yeah, because it's an item on there.
Yep. So we do have a motion at this time, Mr. Nelson.
Okay. We move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent for long-term in-school suspension of the student for which the hearing was held through the end of the first semester for violation of school policy JGD-R, grounds for long-term suspension or expulsion, and the suspension of bus transportation for the school year. In addition, the superintendent recommends the student report to the middle school principal's office each morning prior to the start of the school day to empty the contents of his book bag and pockets for the remainder of the 2017-18 school year.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Nelson. He'll get that to you, Mitch.
Perfect, thank you.
It is in writing, but it is in the Sacred Nelson
Yeah, it's
treasury book there. So is there a second to that motion? Second by Mrs. Sims. Further questions, discussions?
President Farrell, I'll be abstaining from voting.
Okay, we have one abstention from voting. All in favor of the motion regarding the students signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare that the motion has passed. I believe that we're ready to continue with the rest of the meeting at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. You look pretty sharp today.
It's in honor of my good friend Don Kierkegaard.
The now Secretary of Education. Yeah? All right, so we're on to our consent items, which is items 9 through 11. That would include, first of all, the November 13th meeting that we had. Myself, Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Hanemichael went through the bills, minus Mr. Brooks, but I think we found everything to be in order. And then you also have some personnel actions, Mr. Jorgensen.
Yeah, just one personnel action. Michelle Hodges as a paraprofessional in the SEC room at $11.75 per hour. This is a new position. We've had some additional need there with students that come in, so.
Okay. So recommendation would be that we accept the personnel actions. On that, then, I would entertain a motion for approval of consent items 9 through 11.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Hanemichael. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schultz. Questions or discussion on the consent items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare that the consent items have been approved. Administrators report. We have Dr. Cook's written report, which I think all of us have had an opportunity to look at. Mr. Jorgensen, do you have items there?
Just a couple items to touch base on. With Education Week being in November, remember we did the meal, the board did the meal for them, received a number of thank yous and appreciations to the board for providing that meal for them. The state budget address, Governor Dugard's address on December 5th. Right now, in law, it's CPI, the index, or 3%, whichever is less, which would go on to school funding every year. CPI is 1.7%, which would obviously be less than 3. The governor's proposed 0% increase for education funding. And that's his proposal. We'll see where it goes. It doesn't sound real promising right now up here as far as that changing a whole lot. But some of the concerns that are going to be brought up, I know, during the session are the fact that with the new formula, on the backside, we've got the accountability that we have to maintain, but on the front side now, the funding isn't following the accountability. So there will be some schools that if they have declining enrollment, and if they've been using capital outlay flexibility, and let's say they have some retirements, any of those dollars would have to go right back in to the formula for the average salary. They're going to be up against the wall, I guess the easiest way to say it. It's going to be tough for some schools right now. So I think you can hear a lot of talk on whether some of the accountability pieces change at least or get suspended for a year. Whether that'll happen, that's up to the legislative body. Something that goes along with that, the federal tax bill, regardless of where anybody stands on that, one major change right now that's in the proposals is that the advanced refunding of bonds is not available, which we just did not too long ago for $470,000 we saved. I did contact our representative and our senators and shared that concern. I know a number of schools did. In 14 years at my previous school, I believe it was a $1.6 million in taxpayer savings we had in refinancing 3 times. This has taken that ability away from schools and I believe hospitals and some others. And I did get a call back today actually from Senator Thune's office, from one of the aides out there, stating that they are aware of it, that it's definitely been a concern that's been brought to their attention. Like I said, we just refinanced. I know in the past we've refinanced years back too, but basically it's taking away the ability to refinance and get a better rate when the rates are better and savings that would go to the taxpayers. So we'll see how that comes out in the committee out there, if it gets put back in or not, or some form of it, but it will definitely have an effect on school districts as they move forward. The middle school auditorium, we have Moss Incorporated coming tomorrow to work on installing the software for the lights. We've had a lot of issues with that. We'll also be repairing 3 microphone jacks and doing some additional work for our auditorium. We were waiting on a cord to come in, dongle cord or something, but it came in. So they're gonna be here tomorrow. We couldn't get them here before our concert on Friday. So that work will take place. And lastly, just a congrats to our volleyball team and coaches. Since our last meeting, they placed 3rd in the state volleyball. So, again, the state budget, we'll see where it goes right now. It's not a real cheery outlook on school funding this year.
Mr. Brooks, do you have anything? Mr. Shaw?
Sure. Here. This is Jordan Smash. We come in and visit a little bit about some career tech ed things. In November, I had the opportunity to travel with the state CTE office to Denver to explore some other career tech ed programs. Last year, I had the opportunity to go to Des Moines and Omaha. This year, we went to Denver and Scottsbluff, Nebraska. So, looking at some different based programs. The first day we were there, we went to a place called CareerWise, and CareerWise is a nonprofit organization that's tied into the school systems, that they do all the hiring of the apprentice programs that go on in Denver school districts. So it was kind of unique to see that in action. We have to look at it, it's a large scaled operation, so they probably are farming a lot of that out because of the size of the district. Kind of a neat deal. Got to visit with some kids about what they're doing and how it works. The next day, we went to what's called Warren Tech, and it's the Jefferson County Public School Systems Career Tech Ed building. Very unique. They do firefighter training, EMT training, cosmetology, culinary, you name it, they've got it. So it is neat to see some of those things in perspective. I don't know how you can mold some of those things that they do into what we do, but we're also unique in how we operate too. We also went to a school, Green Mountain High School, and Green Mountain kind of keeps their CTE stuff internal. I struggled to understand how their whole concept worked. It was very unique. And then we finished the night off. We stopped in Scottsbluff, Nebraska on the way back to Rapid. Scottsbluff just completely remodeled their high school around career tech ed clusters. It was very unique. Their building isn't done, so I would like to go back to Scottsbluff because they're a district in relation to the size we are, and spend some time, take a counselor and a teacher and go down there and really do some more exploration with them. So, good trip. Got the chance to meet the new CT director, have some conversations with her about where they see the department heading, etc. Late October, we got an email out of the Career Tech Ed office that the funding, that the grants that they've always supplied money for that's what I was counting on, was cut, which doesn't surprise me with the deficit that they have in the state right now. I was reassured, though, on this trip that there will be money, because the governor's big push is this whole paid apprenticeship program, that there will be money coming. So she just told me to hold tight. Well, in the meantime, as we're holding tight, I'm trying to get some foundational things developed. I've had some conversations with some businesses in the community. I actually got a phone call, somebody cold called me about some things, and one of the things that they're looking at doing is, if I can get the grant seed money to pay the kid, they'll match what they're paying them and stick it in a fund so they can take it and go to school. So if I can get them paid, they'll match it. Money's gonna go into an account so that when they go off to Lake Area or Southeast Tech or wherever they go, they'll have a pot of money or seed money to start with, in hopes that they'll come back and work for them or pay it back, one or the other. Kind of the Build Dakota Scholarship component before it actually goes is what it is. I've had a couple of kids approach me in regards to plumbing and electrical work. So I would like to see if we can't start laying some groundwork schedule-wise with some of these kids, especially the seniors, that they've got all their core classes down, they've got enough credits to graduate. Bring them in on, let's say an A day, we'll do a couple of electives. They're required classes, and then on the B day, maybe try to get them off and send them to work and see if we can get them some money paid. Our hope is that we can get those kids mainstreamed out into the public and things like that, so they get that exposure. So I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now. I know that was one of the board's pushes out of the retreat, was to continue that CTE development. We're still working on those things, but until I get some financial backing off some things, we're kind of in a development phase. I am still going to continue to explore the aviation program and for sure the criminal justice component, because we can get the criminal justice component without the seed money, because we already have the officer in our building to help us with that process, and he's committed to help us get that done. So we can just get some time to sit down and put our heads together. So that's kind of where we're at CTE wise, and then when we take the tour, we'll kind of take a look at some of those things. On a positive note, we had one of our kids, one of our seniors scored 36 on his ACT. Wasn't going to take it again, he scored 33 as a sophomore, and I told him, you're crazy, you need to take your ACT again. And lo and behold, he scored 36, which doesn't surprise me. Also a national merit semifinalist, so he's got a lot of things going on, applying to med schools and things like that. And that's just one of many we've got going on. A lot of kids we've had, I was just talking to a student in the hall. She was accepted in Minnesota in the aerospace engineering program. So there's a lot of good things going on with the kids. We're working on with the seniors right now, getting them applied to schools, working on scholarships. So we're busy with those things. They have semester exams coming up next week, so we're getting ready for that. And then we gave our seniors the National Career Readiness Certification Assessment back in October. We ended up having 11 of our seniors score platinum, 20 golds, 32 silvers, 19 bronzes, and we had 4 that didn't get their certificates. So about 95% of our senior class will walk out of here with certification. So they can take that to an employer, and here's where my skills are. So we've got a skill-based assessment that they use. It's actually written by ACT. So lots of things going on. That's probably just the tip of the iceberg, but I thought we'll keep you up to date on, especially the CTE component.
Questions of Mr. Shaw? You've been a busy boy.
Yeah, it's been pretty busy's good.
What's what we like too.
You bet.
Ms. Kimmerer, you have anything you want to share?
No, I'm late for mine on number 11.
Oh,
So,
we just did it without you.
okay,
Is that okay?
That's good.
All right. Anything else, administrator report or board reports? Then item number 14 is simply a discussion item, opt-out. Mr. Brooks, Mr. Jorgensen.
Just to kind of review, 2018 is the final year of our current opt-out. The amount we've opted out for is $250,000. That's been in place actually on 12 years, or will be in 12 years with completion of 2018. In 2019, or in 2018, we'll have to make a decision on what we do going forward. In the last few years, we haven't asked for the full amount. It is nice to have an amount in place for the start budget cycle. We know what we can and can't do. If the board does want to continue on with the opt-out. Also, by deciding somewhat earlier in 2018, if we do refer to an election, or if the public refers it to an election, we can then have that with our normal school election, just have the expensive one election. Any questions or anything that people have been asked about in the public pertaining to our opt-out?
I think the biggest thing we want to leave people with is the fact that this is not new. This is not in addition to, this is simply a continuation of what we've had for the past 12 years. And I think definitely one of the things we have to consider is what Mr. Jorgensen reported to us for funding additions coming out of the state portion of aid, with that not looking to be very promising to be much more than a zero. Those opt-out dollars could be very important to us. But I think the biggest thing we as board need to keep in mind is that this is simply a continuation of something that we've had in place, well, for almost 11 plus years now.
And I think the history and the fund balance show that, especially recently, the board's only asked for the dollars needed. It hasn't been full amount, it's been a lesser amount, and that would be our intent. You never know going forward what happens with funding, but that would be the intent, I guess, to have that in place.
Laura, any question
Well, just one,
or comment?
no, one, somebody had asked me about the capital outlay, ones being transferred over. The 40%, yeah, the availability
There's
of
amount that
doing
we
that.
can transfer over. We currently use our capital to the full with our debt that we're paying off, and then our kind of our items from like our board retreats and that. But that is an option that's available to us that hasn't been in the past. We have to, by paying our debt off earlier, that'll help us to use that flexibility earlier if we wanted to.
But then with that, any flexibility you would take out of capital outlay, something else has got to go from what we plan each year.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the board? Do we want to talk procedures of what we might proceed with next at this point, or?
In, whatever decision we do, it has to be made in 2018, so it can affect 2019. The last time we passed the opt-out and then allowed to be referred to a vote, that's still the same process the board is leaning to. But if we kind of, I can bring in language both ways, we can take a look at that in the next meeting, or if we know how we want to maybe proceed with that, I can bring that in directly. The last time, our notice was, it's it says attention taxpayers, and there was a property tax increase of $250,000. That's the wording that's required on there. So we had specific language drafted by attorney that kind of, that label it was not an increase, it's a replacement of the one's expiring and the new one is filling its spot, just so it's a little more clear.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion on the opt-out? Then on to item number 15, which is the policy statements. The first policy, and these would be going for second readings, which then would have the net effect of these becoming our policy. First one is GDM-A, compensatory time agreement. And this was one that we see was basically repetitive. It was a form that supported the policy, and everything that we needed was already in the policy. So if we choose to follow the action, we would simply delete the -A portion of the policy. Questions or discussions there? Do you want to do policies by consent, and then if we want to pull a policy out, would that seem to make the most sense? Okay. Any further questions, discussions on GDM-A? EF, food service management. This was a little bit of a rewrite of some things that we've done in the past. Administrators, any comments you want to make on this before we move forward, or?
Well, just getting in line with some of the language that's needed now out there.
Okay. Questions or discussion on EF food service management? And then we have EF-R. And again, this is talking about, again, policies we've had in place with changes and maybe reflecting more of what we currently are practicing rather than what previous policy was. Does that capture it as best?
And we go into our next year will be, this is our last for our 5th year, so we'll go into a request for a proposal process for a new company. Getting this in place kind of helps them when they bid, they know what their responsibilities are. And this will also then allow our families know what our notification levels are and how they'll be contacted and where they can check their balances and what we have available to them.
Okay, any questions, comments on those? Does anyone wish to take action on the 3 policies?
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Sims is going to move that we adopt these 3 policies. Would there be a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schultz. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of GDMA revision, EF and EFR policies, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Declare that those have been adopted. We are yours, Mr. Shaw. Do we need a partner or?
Whatever makes you happy.
All right.
I think big thing, and maybe we'll just kind of walk and talk, and I'll take you what you want us to see, and